While I was at school, I was also became very involved with the combined cadet force. My father was at that stage was teaching geography, and it was myself and my siblings, I suppose, were very fortunate that we got to go to the school that he was teaching at, and they had a combined cadet force that was very active with their outdoor pursuits and the adventurous side of things. So throughout school, I was able to go sort of whitewater kayaking and climbing and things. I guess was very fortunate that although I was the only girl that was taking part in these activities, the guys running it didn't see that it wasn't a problem at the time, which it would be now.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great. And so was there any particular thing that you did in those early days that got you moving beyond just doing a bit of rock climbing and actually thinking I could do this as a career?
Yeah, so I suppose when I was growing up, I didn't realise that there was a career in the outdoors. I suppose, we didn't have access to social media in the way that we do now. There wasn't as much media attention on adventure and outdoor pursuits. So I didn't know there was a career in it. Some of the sort of, I suppose, pivotal moments were I discovered mountain biking quite early on. I remember cycling back from school when I was about 8 or 9, and I was on my dad's old bike which had this basket on the back and was cycling along. It was a huge bike, and I grew up on the Malvern Hills, and I just thought, I wonder if I can cycle along the hills here. So took the bike off, and I remember coming down this quite a steep track, completely out of control. The brakes didn't really work. The basket was now dragging along behind. I just had this massive grin on my face. It was just, this is amazing. This is so much fun. And that just became a bit of an addiction. I was then out every day on bike. I saved up to buy my first bike which was about £25 at the time, that I'd bought second hand, and I learned how to do it up and put new parts on it and things. And then through the military cadets, I then thought that I was going to go into the military. So I had a place at Sandhurst when I left school, but I chose to take a year out before I went back, and I'd always wanted to go to New Zealand. I was given a book by a cousin of mine that lives in Australia when I was very young, called Land of the Long White Cloud, which is the most beautiful illustrated book on Maori culture and mythology. And I was just obsessed, and I just really wanted to go out there. So I worked in a pub and saved up enough money for my flight ticket out there. And fate, luck, whatever you might consider it, I ended up falling, I suppose, into work in an outdoor centre on the South Island of New Zealand, and trained as a raft guide. Started taking people into the mountains, and suddenly realised that there was a career in this, and came back, did outdoor education at university, and I kind of went from there, really.
Fantastic. So obviously I'm going to have to bring you towards navigation within all of these sports and hobbies that you've done. So in those early days, how were you finding your way around? What were you using for navigation in those sort of, I guess, in, let's say, New Zealand at that time?
Yeah, so it was all map and compass at the time. This was pre-GPS. I remember that sort of GPS starting to filter into the market. Yeah, and it was way out of my price bracket to be able to afford. So it was all map and compass. I think that was something that my dad was really hot on as well. So I suppose one of a very early experience of mine was, again, I was probably about 9. We were up in Snowdonia, and I wanted to go wild camping. So my dad sat me down and made me write out like a route card, go through the maps, like plan my route, and then off I went for 3 days and 2 nights into the mountains by myself with my rucksack.
Wow.
Yeah, so those were quite pivotal moments. So I was really pushed into that, and maps, probably like everybody listening, hold just so much magic. There's always so much possibility, and with the work I do now, maps, navigation, are such a key part of everything that I do. It underpins everything that I do.
So you've shared, I've got a share reel. I'm going to share some photos in a moment. You've shared a show reel. Do you want to tell us a bit about this show reel that I'm going to share?
Yeah, so I thought it would be worth sharing a show reel with you, which kind of showcases some of the projects that I've worked on over the past few years. So I work pretty much full time in the television industry. I initially started as started getting involved actually originally as a rigger, rope rigger, so rigging what we call challenges, but are essentially stunts, and designing those. And then they realised I've got a background in the survival bushcraft side of things as well, and expedition leading. And over the years, this is, I suppose, I've been in the industry now for 20 years, kind of moved into the producing. So I typically have one foot in the creative world and departments, as well as one foot within the safety world. So these are some of the projects that myself and my team have overseen over the past few years.
So you've obviously worked in lots, so I am going to go on to another slide in a moment, but I'm just going to ask you one question. Where is the most difficult place that you've found to navigate? And if you can give me the same answer you gave me when we first spoke, that will lead beautifully onto my next slide.
What did I say last time? Was it the Amazon?
Boom.
Yeah.
Why was the Amazon so? What were you doing in the Amazon, and why was it so hard?
So well, I was actually out there a few weeks ago, and we were recceing locations for a show around rites of passage, which is absolutely fascinating. And like, I'm really interested and do a lot of research into the psychology of survival. And looking at Indigenous cultures and relating that into the modern world and our behaviours in the modern world. But the trip that Colette and I were talking about yesterday was one which was a show that was commissioned by Facebook Watch, and the idea around it was that in the 80s, an Indigenous chieftain wandered out of the Amazon jungle in Brazil and narrated the story of his peoples to an investigative journalist. And it's the most fantastical story. It goes back 1,000 years, and there's alien intervention, there's ties in with the Nazca lines, which are the great big stone details that you can only see from above, that are in the shapes of animals and other shapes out there in the desert. And the investigative journalist wrote it down in a book, which at the time went, today's equivalent of viral, if you like. And these adventurers and explorers started going out. And in the book, when he narrates his story, he goes into great detail about where his peoples live and how they originally lived in these 3 big cities out in the jungle. So one in Peru, one in Brazil, and one a little bit ambiguous, but that they now live underground. And the show was commissioned, and the idea was that we were 2 teams. My team, myself and a geologist, we were going to follow the instructions that he gave in this book on how to find these lost cities, and the other team were going to investigate what was the fact that some of these adventurers and explorers that had gone looking for these 3 cities had started not returning. And the investigative journalist had been shot in Rio. So that team, headed up by ex-FBI operative and another investigative journalist, were then looking into that. And the whole thing was super intriguing. But the one where we went into Peru and sort of went deep in jungle, following, navigating waterways and watercourses up to try and find this lost city.
Okay, so this is a trailer for. Is this going to come out soon? Is this already out? Because
yeah, so this is already out, but this came out a few years ago actually, and I've been wanting to find a way to go back, because we ended up in Peru. We travelled all these watercourses for several weeks, navigating our way up river, following the instructions. working very closely with the local peoples there, and we got up and there was a huge flash flood, and we ended up, it was the start of the rainy season, and we ended up having to pull the plug on the project at the time, because it became a safety concern. So this is somewhere we're actually going back next year.
Perfect. All right, well, let's watch this trailer. It looks fascinating.
So we think this is it? This is not a conjecture. It's not a hypothetical. This is an actual crime scene.
A lost city. I'll go somewhere here in the Amazon. Everybody wants to find it.
Oh my God.
There was a big hole in the back of his head.
This is as wild as it gets.
We're gonna find some gold. We're gonna find a city. At the very least, we're gonna find some answers.
It is one of the most hostile places on earth.
This team is about to go to extreme lengths. Oh,
We have a problem.
to find out if the lost city exists.
There's no way that this is a natural structure.
Here we go. Here we go. And what happened to those 3 explorers who went looking for it?
Is that a bone?
I can feel my brother. He was here.
So what can we watch that on? Do you know where we have to go to be able to watch it?
Yeah, so it's currently on the Discovery, at the History Channel. Sorry, it's yeah.
Looks fascinating. Wow. So are there any other environments that you think are sort of equally difficult to navigate, but for completely different reasons?
Yeah, so the Amazon and the jungle is very difficult to navigate, oftentimes because the way that these regions are often mapped is aerially. So you haven't got people going out and on into the whole of the area. It's done from the air, and what sometimes happens is that the canopy. It's very difficult to read the terrain that's going on underneath the canopy. So oftentimes maps of those areas can be quite inaccurate. And when we are going into those areas and we know that the mapping isn't as accurate as it could be, this is where like the amazing technology of Google Earth is so helpful, because you can understanding how what the jungle does underneath the canopy. You can start reading the top of the canopy a lot more with like where the shadows are, so where the dips are, because underneath that canopy it's typically very soft.
I think we saw that, didn't we, in one of these sort of saying that's not natural. What we can see down there is not natural.
Yes, yeah, and it's you end up with a lot of these watercourses that are that end up carving out these rivers and streams, and you end up with these very steep like ridges and sort of hills, if you like, underneath the canopy that become very difficult. It's like a maze in there. It's very difficult to navigate through. So yeah, a lot of preparation, a lot of planning goes into whenever we go off into those environments.
So we talked about another environment that you've been to and is equally difficult to navigate for many different other reasons. Would you like to tell us a bit about your trip to Iceland, or trips? I imagine you.
Yes, yeah. So I filmed in Iceland. We've done various film projects out there, and it's always such a beautiful place, and you can totally see where like the stories of the trolls and the hidden people and things come from, and like the sort of the mythology behind it all. It's such a barren place, but such a beautiful place. This is actually from a personal trip which I went on. So there was 2 of us, and we did a south to north ski crossing of Iceland in the winter, which very rarely gets done because it can catch a lot of people out, because it's still very much a maritime environment. Very much like here in Snowdonia, it's like the weather can change incredibly quickly. So it seems like it's a very flat, white environment, but because it's geologically so new, there's so many sort of big crevasses in the terrain, and as you're sort of traveling through, it'd be very, very easy to accidentally ski into one of these big holes or go off a cliff. And what happens is like all the fog kind of rolls in over it very, very quickly. So most of the journey looked very much like this little video. So as you tell,
really that white out.
It really is, and it's the most bizarre thing as well, because when you're skiing along, you can like sometimes only just see like the tips of your skis, and it's like you're not sure if you're moving or not, and it's like you get this weird like vertigo kind of sensation when you kind of can't figure out if you're moving or not. But
how do you determine if you've moved?
It's watching the skis. You can see from the skis that it's sort of moving the snow is a good way of that. But because the conditions sit around freezing, so it sits around 0 degrees. Whereas if you're looking at like northern Norway, typically in the winters, or further north, typically in the winters you get a very sort of dry snow, and that's where this picture on the right pulling what we call a pulk, which basically got everything that we need in it for the duration of the trip, so we can be self-sufficient. And when you're up in like really cold, dry snow, the pulk moves through it quite quickly. There's not much resistance, but here in Iceland there was so much resistance because it was fluctuating so quickly between +3 or 4 degrees and down to -3, 4, down to -10. So it was kind of this very sort of wet environment, and we got stuck in the tent on a few occasions because we made the decision that we were. Yeah.
And then this is you stuck in it, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah. So this was one of the big rain showers that came through, and there's like within a few minutes you're absolutely soaking, and then you can't. There's no way of drying anything. So whenever those big rainstorms came through, we'd become stuck in the tent, and like all the snow would be melting out around it. But there's no shelter, so as you're going through, there's no rocks really or anything that you can hide behind, and we're getting sort of gusts of 100 and 120 mile an hour winds that were coming through. So for that, in that environment, you need a really, really strong tent. And then this picture on the right, where this was part of the navigation of this as well, was navigating snow bridges. So the snow bridges that are going across the water courses, and because the temperature doesn't stay freezing and below freezing, they're very fragile.
How do you know where they are?
It's a good question. Yeah, so a lot of times, so the mapping of Iceland is very good, and I spent days and days on Google Earth before we ventured out, sort of minutely zooming in on everything and trying to get an understanding of how the water might be flowing, because you look on Google Maps or Google Earth, and you can kind of see these great big sort of alluvial fans that are spreading out, and often the water changes, the courses change very quickly, so kind of really zoning in on those, and then sort of anticipating what it might have done, looking at previous like precipitation from the past 6 months, to see how those channels might have changed.
So you're trying to avoid the water routes and walk on the bits in between the water.
Yes, and then there are areas where there isn't any choice. You need to be able to cross those. So it's then a lot then is reading the snowpack as well. Like looking at like a snow is, I'm like a bit of a snow nerd. Like all the snow crystals and things absolutely fascinate me. But if you sort of dig through a snowpack, you'll see all these different layers within the snowpack, and it tells the story of what's happened over the season, and that helps decide when and where to cross. And this picture on the left is actually us lowering and then abseiling down snow slopes because we were trying to avoid avalanche zones.
Right.
That was something else that we faced there because again the temperatures are fluctuating and the slopes on steeper terrain, sort of 45 degrees plus typically, were very unstable. So this was us trying to bypass.
That's amazing. So yeah, we've got a tent with not much around it. So how would you decide which direction you're going or going to go from when you get up in the morning? Having slept badly or well? Do you sleep well in tents in Iceland?
It depends. If it's super windy and there's torrential rain, there's always that like, when am I going to have to get up to go and repeg it? Because I mean these tunnel tents are absolutely amazing, but you want to pitch them into the wind. You don't want the wind coming sideways at them, otherwise it squashes them. So you want them to sort of But with the way that the wind works in Iceland is, as I was saying, there's no protection. The tent needs to be super robust because we'd get these sort of 100-mile-an-hour gusts like coming in from the side, and like the tent would like flatten itself and then pop back up again. But I do usually sleep very well in tents. I find it quite relaxing listening to nature around. But when you get
so how would you then decide where to go in the morning when you?
So I'd already pre-mapped everything out on Google Earth and using paper maps, and then uploaded that into a GPS unit. So I had a GPS unit with me, and what we got a Garmin InReach. So this is a Garmin InReach Mini, and this can be used as a navigation device, but it's also a satellite communication device as well. So I could text out through this. You can either message directly from the little device, but it's a bit fiddly with these tiny ones, or it connects by Bluetooth to your phone, and there's an app, and then you can actually message out using the satellite systems, so that we could get as accurate as we could do weather forecasts. So because I've worked in Iceland sort of filming quite a lot, I have some amazing contacts within the mountain rescue there, and within the guides there. So it's like talking to them, you can't beat local knowledge.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. So how did you get out of the tent when it has that much snow?
You just kind of have to burrow your way out, because when it's like wet like that, it kind of comes in and then it all sets really hard, but you don't want it. We'd try in the night having to like knock the snow off, because you don't want it building up on top, otherwise it ends up breaking the poles.
So my brother has a theory that he goes to cold places because there's no creepy crawlies there. Which I guess is true, but that coldness just does nothing for me. Yeah, crazy. Anyway, so I asked you about other places. So after we'd spoken last time, I asked you about other places, and you mentioned Mongolia. Can you tell us a bit about what you were doing there, and also the navigation aspects of doing whatever you were doing there, please?
Yeah, Mongolia, I think, is one of my favourite places. I think it's one of the few places left, which is the peoples that live there still live very traditionally. So you land into Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia, and you've got all the buildings there have just been have replaced what was ger camps. So gers are essentially yurts, so there's no real design of the city there. It's a kind of chaotic place. And then you leave the city and there's no tarmacked roads. It's all off-road. And it's just incredible. You can go anywhere, and you're sort of out super remote in these areas, and you come across a little ger, and the people are so welcoming, and they'll welcome you in, and they've got their tea, their yak milk tea going, and they'll hydrate you, and they'll bring out their sort of dried bread and their yak milk cheeses and things, and they'll share all this with you. It's the most incredible place. But I think navigation through there, because it's so diverse. You've got like sort of the Gobi, which is all sort of sand and desert, up into like the Altai up in the sort of northwest, of Mongolia, where you've got the mountains. So I've worked out there a few times with film shoots, and we took a brand there last year. And it's absolutely magical. And the peoples that live there, so we've got like the Kazakh peoples that we work with quite a lot, this them with their camels, but they still hunt with golden eagles. So they will go, and this is them. This is a picture from one of the trips. And they will go when the chicks they hatch. They'll go and take one of the chicks, and they will and they take the chicks that they take. They're not old enough to fly yet, but they're old enough to feed themselves. And it's always the female that they take, because the females are typically stronger and more intelligent than the male birds. And then they'll hunt with them. But a full-grown female golden eagle, like these ones that these 3 riders have, they're able to take down a wolf. They're absolutely incredible. So they hunt in the winter with them. That bond is amazing. And then when the bird is about 7 or 8 years old, they release them back into the wild, because that's when they come into their breeding prime. And so it continues. But yeah, this is from one of the expeditions. We travelled through the Altai region on horseback with them. It's just the most incredible thing, because their eyes are so attuned to their backyard that they're able to spot foxes and various other animals out there. And yeah, this is a little girl who has become an eagle master. Like, she's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So that one's got a face covering over it. How is it? Do they take that off to release it?
Yeah. So the golden eagle, it's I think I'm right in it. It's got when it's up in the air, it can see for many kilometers, and they put that on to help keep the stimulation low. Because if your eyes are that sensitive that you can spot a mouse from several kilometers, it's just too much information for them all around. So they keep that there. It helps keep the bird calm. And these birds that get treated incredibly well, they're kind of revered within the culture.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this guy was wearing this is a wolf skin jacket that one of his eagles had hunted at some point, stitched together. Yeah, I think I'm looking a bit confused there, because we were there to we were making a show around them. It was really beautiful, actually. We were really sort of integrated into the community. But this is where I'm looking a little bit confused, because this guy's turned up and he's asking how many yaks I'm worth to become his 3rd wife. So it's a bit those cultural moments, so you don't want to upset anybody. But
yeah, that does look warm. That wolf skin does look very warm. I didn't quite work out what that was. Fantastic. A few more. So my first one is, how are you seeing the change from into digital technology, and how is that being balanced with, I imagine in some of these remote places you don't have a reliable satellite signal potentially, or do you have?
So it depends on the trip. So because of the work that I do, a huge part of it is mitigating risk, and we're looking at safety. So I'm a big believer, if this technology exists, if we can afford it, and if it works in the areas that we're going to, we should be taking it with us. So myself and the teams that come out with me or go for me are equipped with Starlink, which is incredible. So that is sort of high bandwidth internet connections, pretty much anywhere in the world. We had it in Mongolia, actually, and we were in the Altai Mountains, which borders China and Russia, and because we were so close to the Russian border, it wouldn't work for us. But as soon as we sort of became even sort of 500 meters slightly further away from the Russian border, it was working again, and we used it successfully deep in the Amazon and things. It's quite incredible. So that but at the moment that requires a generator to power. So obviously you need the infrastructure, and the team with you to be able to carry those generators. So in Mongolia, it was the camels, poor things, having to carry the generator for us, and the fuel for
How big
that.
is a generator? How big are we talking?
I mean, they can be quite small, but they're typically this sort of size.
Oh, wow.
And then the fuel that goes with them. But we're usually quite strict on on when it gets powered up. I think that the technology now is evolving where we'll be able to use much smaller charging methods for that. Yeah.
Okay. So our next speaker is Tristan Gooley, who he's the natural navigator. I think it's fair for me to say that. Well, he's certainly written books about it. Do any aspects of natural navigation feature within what you're doing? I mean, you sort of mentioned it a bit with this, well, quite a lot with the snow and the rivers and that sort of thing. Is there any other aspects of natural navigation that you use quite regularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's these things, I suppose, when you're out in these environments a lot, like essentially we're going back into what was our natural habitat. Like our bodies and our minds are actually highly attuned to that environment. We just need to disconnect from all the noise and chaos of the modern world and this incredible world that we've created. But once we go back in, like our minds are hardwired into these environments and looking out for danger and risk in these environments. So I think once we go back into these places, we become very aware of things like when it's going to rain, where the sun is in the sky. So these are all things as I'm moving through, whether it's jungles or deserts, these are things that are always in the back of my mind and information that my brain's taking on to help me know exactly where I am at hopefully at all times. So it's very easy to become disorientated, but if you've kind of got that in your mind and sort of banking it. So if we're moving through jungle terrain in particular, I'm always looking backwards as well as I'm looking forwards, because as soon as you turn around, it looks completely different, and there's like you can't see, you're not navigating to big features and things. So if we're moving through jungles and making jungle trails, we tend to put like a blaze, so you use a machete to take like a tiny chunk of the bark out on both sides of the tree, so if you need to turn around for whatever reason, you can go back out.
How often would you mark a tree? How many?
It depends how dense it is, but in particularly sort of like denser, it would be like every sort of 5 meters.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I've got to ask you this: has on any of your trips navigation gone wrong, so that you were in a difficult situation? Is any that you're willing to share? I know your career is based on you not getting lost, but
no, it always happens, doesn't it? It's a momentary blip, but yeah, certainly I've I suppose early on in career and things, you sort of take your mind off the game. I was when I was out in New Zealand and working out there, I went off by myself. They call that hiking tramping out there, and I'd gone off hiking into the wilderness there, and I'd only bought. It was probably a financial reason at the time. I'd only bought one map, but I knew the route carried on up. So I didn't actually have the map for the full route that I was going to. And yes, I ended up out there for several more days than was expected with very little food. And like the panic starts kicking in.
How did you find your way back?
Eventually we're following the water course, actually. So hitting a river and then following the river back downstream. Yeah.
Brilliant. So if somebody listening thinks, oh, I really fancy going to Mongolia, any advice, any suggestions as to how you would plan it and how you would navigate when you're there?
Oh, you can always come and join one of our expeditions, but
yes, an organised expedition
yes,
is a good plan if you've not had the background that you've had, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of going back to your point on like how navigation has evolved, and how accessible it is now. I'm based in Snowdonia, and already this year, mountain rescue have been out more than they did the entirety of last year, and the demographic that we're seeing, making those rescues increase is 18 to 24-year-olds. And I'm interested to know whether a part of that is that the outdoor centres a lot of them have been closed down, which
Right.
gave young people at least a week or a few days introduction to the outdoors, how to look after yourself, basic navigation, and things. People become very reliant on technology and phones, not understanding that the phone signal doesn't work everywhere, or batteries are affected by the cold, and it catches the weather changes so quickly and it catches people out. So I think if anybody's listening that hasn't been on an expedition but would like to, definitely invest in these, paying like an outdoor instructor to take you out into the mountains, teach you some basic the fundamentals of navigation, keeping yourself safe and well within the outdoor environment.
Good advice, definitely. And we're sort of exploring that, the role that the Royal Institute of Navigation could play in encouraging people to be getting some decent training from somewhere. Many places to do that. So I will ask this. I haven't invited you to speak because you're a woman, but you are a woman, we can see that. So it feels like it's probably quite a male-dominated world that you're working in, certainly as a survivalist. Are there any pros or cons to being a woman in that place? Have you seen it that it's been a barrier or a positive side?
Well, I think the superpower is that that you're always underestimated, and I think when I'm going in to sort of manage large teams, and there's particularly within the TV world, it's like it moves so fast, and I don't look like your traditional TV safety or survivalist person. So I can come in and I'm typically there with a male colleague, and there's that assumption that he's in charge. So you get a lot of people sort of pandering to egos and things, and it allows you to be able to kind of step back and actually really see what's going on, to then be able to sort of make a calculated thing, because it's like nobody's massaging my ego right now. So so I think it's super. Yes, there's definitely times when it's very difficult. Obviously there's parts of the world where equality isn't what we have here in the UK, and then it's ultimately trying to get the job done, keep people safe, and finding ways to be able to do that, respecting sort of the culture in the country that you're in as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that we talk about as a group is that your childhood upbringing, the introduction to outdoors and adventure as a child is potentially, completely reliant on whether your parents did that. Do you think that's something that, you mentioned to me that you were, one woman within a big group, and now I think we would struggle to get one child in a group without a female who was keen to do it as well. Do you think there's any way that we can encourage more women to get into outdoor adventure?
I think this is the power of social media, and this is the positives of social media, is that when I was growing up, Facebook probably came in when I was like 16 or 17 maybe, and to start with, it wasn't really used. It wasn't used in the way that it is today. I remember actually starting to use it when I was in New Zealand, purely to share images with my family and friends. But I think now it gives access to such a wider range of people. So whatever you're interested in, you'll be able to find somebody that you can identify with that is doing what you want to do. And I think that's really powerful. And I feel like that narrative around us, like around women, is something that we need to change ourselves as well. Because yes, there certainly are things around the sort of male female relationship and some men's behavior in places, but I think a lot of the time we need to also take responsibility ourselves in changing the narrative. Change is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight, and this is something that we also need to take ownership of and have more conversations like this.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you're doing your part as far as showing us women can do absolutely anything. Just do it. Just do it. Brilliant. So we've got some questions. Question from Iris: what do you think are some barriers that young people and women face when trying to get into the outdoor industry, and what can we do to overcome these? So getting actually into, I guess, let's be specific, the film industry that you've got into as an outdoor expert. How would people, anybody, but yeah, get into that?
Yeah, so I think some of the barriers that women face is initially, if you're coming into it as a young person, is maybe not having had those opportunities. Maybe there wasn't the female cover, or maybe your school, or you weren't necessarily exposed to opportunities where you could embrace that. So a lot of women are discovering adventure in the outdoors at an older age. And then we've got your sort of women, I suppose, going into the outdoor career. It doesn't pay particularly well if you're an outdoor instructor, and then as women, we may choose to have a family, which then means that we have to step out, and as a freelancer, it's very difficult because you don't get maternity cover. So these are all things that that I know some of the mountaineering organisations in the UK, like the sort of Mountaineering Instructor Association, are exploring at the moment. I know there's a few people within that organisation that are very passionate about that, and trying to figure ways of how as women we have it all. We can have this outdoor career and we can have a family, because it's very difficult.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a really good response. Another question: I've recently been reading your Mind of a Survivor book and found it super fascinating. You talk a bit about ways to start building our survivor mindsets in everyday life, but can you expand on this a little? I was particularly interested in understanding how to overcome and compartmentalize emotions, particularly fear. Great.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, and this is something that I could quite happily ramble on for hours about, so I'll try and keep it short. But fear is a natural response to the world around us. As I said earlier, we are hardwired to be looking for threat within our environment. Our minds, our brains evolved when we were being predated upon by saber-toothed tigers or warring tribes, and we've created this modern world very, very quickly around us, which our brains have adapted to, but the evolution hasn't caught up. And if you think about the fact that our brains are hardwired for threat constantly around us, we've got the vehicles that are moving around, we've got this noise, like our senses are completely overwhelmed all the time. So it's being able to contextualize and be able to take ourselves out of the stress response and back into logic and reasoning, which is essentially what makes us human. And that is quite difficult to do. I mean, we are actually running courses at the moment, because this is a topic that absolutely fascinates me, where we are taking women actually on journeys, physical journeys that replicates the emotional journey that you go through with fear and anxiety, and helping contextualize it. But
has that got a particular fear of a particular thing that you're dealing with, or is that generally I'm just fearful of?
Yeah, so it's typically around, like, what we look at is like particularly overwhelm, because the world is so stimulating. Media, other people's perfect lives on Instagram, all of these things are triggering us, and the hormonal and chemical response, like within our bodies and minds, is exactly the same, whether you're seeing that triggering post or that triggering email, as when we were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And it was never designed to be switched on all the time. It was designed to be switched on for a very short period of time, and then the body was supposed to calm down, you'd go and sleep in your cave, and then you'd come back out and interact with the world again. But we don't have that luxury in our worlds now, so we become very overwhelmed, and it's lots of little things that build up that eventually, if we're not careful, can lead to burnout.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was an absolutely brilliant insight into the world of an explorer, survivalist, and expert navigator. I'm absolutely in awe of everything that you've done, and I look forward to keeping in touch and keeping following you on all the other socials.